So 24,000 houses were built in illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank from 2022 to 2023, shifting over to the Middle East now. All of you who may be listening maybe know that there is a genocide currently happening, but they don't call it that. They're just cleaning up ethnically.
Yeah, it's a war, even though only one side has tanks and planes.
Yeah, right. Record-breaking settlement and construction in the West Bank, a year in review. So, between November 2022 and October 2023, Israel constructed 24,000 housing units within existing settlements in the West Bank, marking the highest number on record since the United Nations began monitoring the situation in 2017. This unprecedented surge in settlement activity has drawn significant international attention and criticism, as it always has, highlighting the ongoing complexities and tensions in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, the period saw an increase in the approval and construction of the housing units in the West Bank. Notably, the Israeli government approved plans for over 3,000 new homes and settlements in early 2024, with significant allocations made in Ma'ale Adunim, Arafat, and Kedar. This expansion was partly framed as a response to security incidents, including a deadly Palestinian attack near Ma'ale Adunim. And this is what they always frame it as. They always say, "Oh, there's, Palestinians, they're terrorists, and if any time that they fight back, then that gives us carte blanche to go ahead and disproportionately attack them and take over parts of their land and stuff like this." But generally, why they're attacking them in the first place is because you keep stealing their land. It's this vicious cycle that nobody seems to want to try to break. But the cycle starts with Israel stealing the land out from under them in 1948 with the Nakba, the displacement of 750,000 Palestinians, and sending them packing into obscure and weird, pushing them further and further out into the Badlands, which it's a hot, deserty kind of place. The IDF will go in there and do stuff like put concrete in a well and go to a Palestinian's home and fill up the well with concrete so that they can't farm anymore, or go in and cut down all their 100-year-old olive trees, or steal their goats for the day and chase them away with drones so that the Palestinian rancher has to walk around in circles, and or they say, "Oh, you have to leave for the day, or you have to leave for the week, and you can't." The level of oppression that the IDF, or I should say the IOF, the Israeli Occupation Forces, that's what they should be called, what they do is insanely fucked up. And to add insult to injury, they keep stealing this land. And now all this land is internationally illegal. So the international community has largely condemned these developments. The United States, under Secretary Anthony Blinken, reiterated his longstanding policy that new settlements are counterproductive to achieving peace and are inconsistent with international law. So even Mr. Keep on Rockin' in the Free World, Anthony Blinken, ties to Mossad, says that maybe they shouldn't be stealing people's homes in the West Bank. Now, keep in mind, guys, that this has been happening since 1948, but it was talked about. The godfather of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, had talk about displacing Palestinians as early as 1890 in his book, Der Judenstaat. And this also was made clear in the letters that he wrote to friends and family, co-workers, colleagues, neighbors, whatever it was. He wrote letters that distinctly expressed wanting to get rid of the Palestinians and that they were just going to have to live with it. So the impact on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, this construction is not helping. Peace Now, an Israeli anti-settlement watchdog, warned that these plans would hinder the prospects of a two-state solution and exacerbate tensions. Well, who'd have thunk it? The Palestinian Authority, with other regional actors, including Jordan and Hamas, have also condemned the expansion, viewing it as a deliberate attempt to hear the historical and legal status of the occupied territories. Now, the early settlements in the West Bank were established in 1967, immediately following the war. These initial settlements were primarily motivated by security concerns and religious ideologies. So They want an ethno-state. They want a state for them and them only, and other people's religious beliefs or cultural values that don't fit, they are now on the opposition too. And security concerns. Of course, when you take somebody's land, say if I went over to your house, Mike, and I kicked you out and I said, but you can live in the garage, Mike, but I don't. But if you complain about it, I'm gonna bomb you. Okay, I'm gonna throw a stink bomb in the garage, and I'm gonna, and then if you try to fight me on it, then I'll just kill you. Right?
Hey, man, you have a right to exist.
Yeah, this is basically what they're saying. I never understood how somebody wouldn't be mad that they took their land.
I mean, it's textbook settler colonialism, and bringing it back to the 4th of July, I saw another post yesterday. This has been prevalent on Upstream podcast. Just check out Upstream on Instagram. And they were talking about how originally the reason that American independence happened was because the King of England didn't want to keep the settler colonial project of America expanding because it was too costly. Like, they were running up against a lot of resistance from the Native Americans, and they were rightfully fighting for their land that they had been on for hundreds of thousands of years, and it was too costly for the British Army to keep up. And they're like, look, we just want to keep things where they are. The 13 colonies are fine. You guys don't need to keep expanding westward. But that wasn't satisfying for the rich business owners like George Washington. Like, there were a lot of wealthy landowners who had a literal profit interest in expanding westward the U.S., and that's what they did. They separated from from England and then settled the rest of the continent. That was their goal. That's what they wanted to do, and it was for profit. And just like Israelis do all kinds of horrible things to Palestinians, like chopping down their trees, like you were talking about, in the Native American massacres, there were times where they knew the growing season was to the point where they could not plant any corn again, and they would go and burn all the corn crops so that the people would starve or have to flee the land. They did this intentionally, and everybody knows about like the smallpox blankets and all the other things, but like there was so much devious and just totally inhumane shit that the colonizers did that of course doesn't get talked about because that would be CRT or destroying the history of America.
Yeah, the whole thing about critical race theory. No, we don't want to hear about any alternative viewpoints.
Facts hurt your feelings, bro.
America was founded by Jesus, and he was raised on hot dogs and apple pie, and we all love baseball and blowjobs and freedom. And come on, I always loved the caricature of it all, though. Yeah. Baseball, I will say I like the announcer. The announcer always put me to sleep. I always like the. It's a sad day for baseball, folks. Okay, we got Clemens up on the mound. It's 0-2, 2-0, and we're in the 9th inning here. And it looks like it's pretzel day. Oh, it's a sad day for baseball, folks.
Damn, you could have done that, bud. You could do it.
Well, it looks like we got a little rain. Rain's coming out on the tarp. We're experiencing a little bit of. Yeah, he's had a great season this year. He's really pepped it up this year. Sorry, everybody. I'm having a little fun. So come on. This was... People try to write to me. They go, the Palestinians and the Israelis, they've been fighting with each other since the beginning of time. And that was the go-to boilerplate information that I knew up until a couple of years ago. And now I know that, in fact, it's actually quite a one-sided affair, and it is the most starkest example of United States, war crimes. Because let's face it, we're giving them the weapons. All those weapons are stamped, made in the USA, and with our money and everything like that. So I'm not really fucking surprised. Settlers were driven by various factors: religious conviction, security concerns, and economic incentives. Now, while the first settlements were often unofficial initiatives, they soon gained government support. By 1970s, successive Israeli governments, particularly under Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Nice, thanks. Never heard of him. Never heard
He's
of
a
him.
piece of shit.
As they all are. I mean, the first prime minister they had said the Palestinians shouldn't take any deals because we stole their land and they should be mad. And so I don't really blame them for fighting. They actively promoted settlement expansion. During Begin's administration, a number of settlements more than tripled, and the settler population increased over fivefold. So you had urban settlements, rural settlements, and outposts, unofficial settlements that were established without government authorization. Now, it's so loose now that they're handing out guns to people with no accountability. They're saying, you go out here and you just do, we'll give you cash, we'll give you everything you need to set up. You had famously the guy saying, hey, if I don't steal it, somebody else will.
Yeah.
The international community, including the United Nations, has consistently viewed the settlements as illegal under international law, citing the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits an occupying power from transferring its civilian population into occupied territories. The growth of the settlements has significantly complicated peace negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, as if they really wanted peace negotiations, the Israelis. The settlements fragment Palestinian territory, making the establishment of a contiguous Palestinian state more challenging. No shit. By 2024, the settler population of the West Bank had grown to over 670,000, including those in East Jerusalem. Jesus criminy, that's a lot of people, isn't it? To illegally be squatting indigenous land.
It's so funny, like the Western framing of all this, like who are the terrorists and who are the peaceful people. And it's like the fact that you have all of the non-Western media, like Russian and Chinese and Middle Eastern media, saying that Israel is a terrorist state. It's a rogue state that is violating international law, that the settlements are illegal, and that it does not have a right to exist, and that the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves, even violently. And that's like consistent across the board for all media outside of American and European media, and Australian, I guess, if you want to include them. But like,
no, we're not
outside of the West.
Them.
Fuck those guys. But,
fuck those guys.
But that's what's funny about it is like even Western media will admit that the settlements are illegal under international law, but then they still just say that Palestinians are terrorists or that Hamas are terrorists, and it literally is just the emotional framing that they apply to it when even by factual admission they admit that the Israelis are the terrorists in the situation.
Yeah, that's pathetic, isn't it? Yeah, and we keep on helping them, and I just don't see how we can claim any moral high ground. And Netanyahu comes out and says we're the children of the light and they're the children of the dark. Like this is like a Disney movie, like Aladdin or something, where you have the typical dark-skinned Disney villains. Bizarre, obvious Nazi kind of dehumanization He's talking like one of these Nazi guys. So the United Nations has repeatedly condemned the settlements as illegal. The European Union has consistently criticized Israel's settlement activities. Amnesty International organization has condemned the settlements, highlighting their role in human rights abuses. And Human Rights Watch has documented and criticized the human rights violations associated with the settlements, including the forced displacements and the restrictions on their freedom of movement, which, as you all may know who are listening, Gaza is essentially a prison. It's an open-air prison. In the early 2000s, they took complete control of Gaza by land, air, and sea. They control everything that goes into it. So you had to ask yourself, wasn't it a little bit bizarre why they're going to war with somebody that they could just shut off their water? If you can shut off your enemy's water, that's not a war. That's something different. That's you shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
Get it straight. So the countries that are involved, while the U.S. has historically been a close ally of Israel, various administrations have expressed concerns over settlement. For instance, the Biden administration has reiterated that settlement activity undermines the prospect for a two-state solution. Well, why don't you do something about it, Sleepy Joe? The German government has called... He'll be snoozing. Germany has also called for the immediate rescindment of settlement construction approvals, labeling them as violations. Thanks, Germany. Little late. Why don't you do something about it? Typical. That Olaf Scholz, man, he's just a pile of fucking hog shit. French prosecutors have brought in criminal charges against activists promoting boycotts of Israel, reflecting the country's legal stance against settlement activities. So France, they all talk a big game. They say, oh, it's not good, but nothing gets done because these organizations, or even the lip service that the countries are paying. They're saying, yeah, that's not good. You guys can't do that. Does nothing. And in fact, it just gives Israel the idea that over all these years of all the complaining that we ever do with these settlements, we're not going to do anything. They're hollow threats.
Yeah, nobody needs the finger wagging.
Keep building those settlements. Keep building them. That's really what you want, right? We're not going to do anything. We're not going to stop you. Come on. Just keep going.
No teeth behind it.
Yeah, no spine. So academic and civil society organizations, we have the BDS movement, right? That's one way we can support our homies on the other side. Peace Now, Israeli anti-settlement watchdog. Also a good one. Other entities like Airbnb, the global tourism, has initially announced that it would stop listing properties in settlements, although it later reversed the decision under pressure from various U.S. states. So even Airbnb was pressured not to have their... you can't get an Airbnb in a settlement area, that you're going to get to go, we stayed at this old Palestinian people's houses. They kicked the family out and they made it real nice, and now it was just great. We had such a great stay. And Airbnb is like, no, we'll stop that. And then the U.S. pressured them to reverse it. So you can actually go to occupied Palestine and go get yourself an Airbnb. Don't ever use Airbnb, people. Come on.
Or if you do, go do it and you get one in occupied Palestine, do it really close to the wall or wherever you're most likely to get hit by one of those rockets that gets through the Iron Dome.
Yeah.
Do it there, please.
Yeah, stand close to the wall with your mouth open. Various U.S. states, some states have enacted anti-boycott laws targeting companies that refuse to do business with Israeli settlements. So now in some states in America, you can't even boycott and say, well, I'm not going to buy products from this because I ethically don't agree with it. You can't even do that. You can't even promote boycott information, right? That's twisted. That's against the First Amendment. And I'm a constitutional scholar, and I know my rights, and I'm America, and don't tread on me, and blah, 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 blah.
That's funny. I mean, that actually is a big thing for some right-wing people. Like, I know Abby Martin is one of the best people for reporting on Palestine and Gaza before this current genocide. Her documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom, was really well known and just has been really popular for obvious reasons. But she was one of the first people to bring light to the anti-BDS laws. And I think she talked about it in Texas. I can't remember exactly what state, but she was talking about it in one of the southern states where it really stands out as being for such a freedom-oriented state to have these laws that say you can't even criticize the state of Israel and get employed in that state at all. It's it raises a lot of eyebrows for some people, but obviously not enough to get it overturned. Although I think it might have been recently, if I'm correct. But either way, it's just surprising that it would have taken that long to begin with for all these freedom-loving, gun-toting dudes who don't like Israel to begin with on the right, for the most part.
Yeah. We should get some American flags and just wave them around constantly and, take back that thing so that we can at least get through to these people who are so stupid. Freedom of speech, America, right? Freedom of speech, freedom to say no to things, freedom to protest, shit like this, right? America. But it's because we don't fit that typical thing. I swear to God, if we got some red hats and some American flags and then just said communist shit, but didn't use the communist word, they would go, sounds good, I get it, so I don't have a boss, but we're all a cooperative because other businesses are doing it and it can work and it's more... I'll try it, but I hate communism.
Hey, yeah, me too, bro.
Yeah, me too, man. Fuck those commies. I'm just talking about a decentralized fucking society where everybody to each their own. So the settlers are these intrepid pioneers of concrete and barbed wire, fancy themselves the vanguard of a divine mandate. They plant their flag draped in mobile homes in Palestinian hilltops with the zeal of crusaders, convinced that their presence will somehow usher in the messianic age. One wonders if the Almighty truly desires his chosen people to manifest destiny through prefab housing and government subsidies. Let us be clear, these settlements are not mere villages or towns. They are fortified colonies, archipelagos of the ethno-religious exclusivity carved out of the occupied territory. Each new outpost is a nail in the coffin of the two-state solution, transforming what might have been a contiguous Palestinian state into a gerrymandered patchwork worthy of the most corrupt American politicians' wet dreams. The moral bankruptcy of this enterprise is matched only by its stunning hypocrisy. The same government that decries Palestinian violence as terrorism sees no contradiction in unleashing armed vigilantes upon olive groves and shepherds. The settlers' slogan might as well be, "What's mine is mine, and what's yours is, well, also mine, because God said so." But beyond the immorality lies the sheer unsustainability of it all. Israel has created a Frankenstein's monster of its own making, a radical constituency that threatens the very fabric of its own democracy. Each new settlement is the ticking time bomb, primed to explode the mere whisper of a territorial compromise. The international community's limp-wristed condemnations have proven as effective as a chocolate teapot. Meanwhile, the bulldozers roll on, creating facts on the ground with every foundation poured. Have you heard about facts on the ground?
What do you mean? Is that like an organization or something?
No, facts on the ground. It's a phrase that they use when they go into war, or when they're doing these kind of military things. So facts on the ground, it basically translates to Netanyahu says, "We're going to do it, but we're just worried about the facts on the ground." Which means they don't care about the implications long term. What they care about, what is going on right now and what that will mean in the future. Like, so if they steal this land and they win, that's all that matters. So facts on the ground basically means we're doing it anyway, and we don't give a fuck what you think we should or shouldn't do in the. What all that matters is the facts on the ground. And they say once we've held these territories, then they're ours. That's the current state of Crimea. Facts on the ground. The facts on the ground are Crimea is Russian now. Facts on the ground. It's a fancy way of saying.
It's the old Karl Rove thing. I remember him saying during the Bush Iraq War years, he was like, we are the makers of history, and you all are left just to report on what we are doing. And that's how they literally thought of it. They thought it doesn't matter the morality, the international legality even, of invading Iraq and killing 1 million people. They didn't care. They just wanted to control the region, or if they can't control it, to let it be unstable, because that's still profitable, to try and quote unquote reconstruct it for profit. But that was what his conception of it was, and that has actually always been the fascist conception. It's why they are idealists instead of materialists. It's why they oppose the collective vision, because they truly believe that what only matters is what is in their mind and what they can act out on others. And if they win, if they're able to do it long term, if they get away with it and they just die on their deathbed at a happy old age of natural causes, like, they essentially do win. Like, this is also the same thing as like Henry Kissinger's realpolitik. He's like, you can say whatever you want, but they're going to operate in a way that is beneficial to them. And unless anyone else stops them, they will continue to do it. But the downside is that the West doesn't like it when other countries engage in realpolitik, and that's why they get so mad about Putin invading Ukraine, even if he doesn't quote unquote have a pretext to do it, even if he just says like all these things he's saying about Western aggression that Westerners themselves don't believe because they only read Western propaganda. It's like, yeah, it kind of works that way. He's acting as an actor of history, and he's just kind of doing something that is in the interest of his nation, whether or not he has the moral authority to do it. And that's what the West is struggling with, is the hypocrisy of having done that for so long and then seeing Putin do the same thing right back to them.
Yeah. Oh, he didn't ask for permission from us because that's our job,
Yeah.
We handle all the rackets in this town, and you got to go through us. It's very mafioso. One is reminded of the old adage about the rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and except in this case, the deck chairs are being bolted to the iceberg. They are a cancer eating away at the possibility of peace, the malignant growth that threatens to metastasize beyond all hope of excision. And when the reckoning finally does come, as it surely must, it will be paid for in blood and tears, as it always in this thrice-damned region. The tragedy, of course, that it need not be that way. Okay? But as long as the messianic fervor trumps reason and land grabs masquerade as security measures, the settlements will continue their inexorable expansion, a slow-motion disaster unfolding before our very eyes, and we, the spectators of this farce, can only watch in horror and despair as the promise of peace recedes even further in the distance to be buried beneath the weight of concrete and willful ignorance. So,